Om Namo Narayan, Guruji.
Onomonaran.
How are you?
All good. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. But today we have a very special guest, someone that you have mentioned in every interview as someone very special in your life. So maybe you can tell us a little bit why you decided to invite Peter today.
Well, actually, my thought was to invite him on the first one, but we thought of it all too late, just the night before, and it was all too quick for him. So we did the show with Grant, and he looked at it and then agreed to do the show this week. So I'm happy about that. He's one of my, oldest friends, and an icon of the San Francisco music scene, one of the founders. Uh, when I was young, 14, 15 years old, and I was crazy for music and meeting all the bands and this and that, he took a special kindness and understanding, and would talk to me for long times. I used to go to his house and meet him, and he used to take his little baby daughter or little baby in a stroller walking in the park in the Panhandle in Golden Gate Park. He lived just nearby. So I used to go and meet him and go for strolls with him, and we used to talk. And he was very kind to me just being a kid in a way. Some people didn't have time for kids, but he took the time and helped to guide my life. Him and also Eric. They were my two mentors from a young age. I'm here today because, he's one of the founders, and he's one of the only ones left too. So many have gone, so many have passed away. And, he's still with us. And so it's an honor to have him here with us a little bit later.
Yes, to me today I had a bit of a laugh because I noticed that not many people are aware that Janis Joplin was in the Big Brother and Holding Company. And even today, when we announced Peter as a special guest, we put a picture, no, of course, of the whole band where Janis is there. And someone said, "Oh my God, she looks just like Janis." And we had to answer.
Actually, Big Brother existed for a year or so, even before Janis joined the band. At one point, well, we'll let Peter tell all the stories.
Yes, I
But
wonder, I'm curious, how was your first time to meet Peter? Was it already with the full band or before?
oh no, it was with the band. Yeah, it was with the band. I mean, because I was crazy for their music and for many of the San Francisco group music, and I just made it a point to go and meet all the bands, and and then also when I did that show on Mount Tam, that also helped to solidify my position more in the scene and be taken more seriously, because I put that all together when I was just 15 and a half years old, and it turned out to be an amazing event. And then I was taken more seriously.
Yeah, wow.
So, but I
Uh,
knew Peter before that, because that's how I got I mean, I knew all the bands. I was already going to all the shows and hanging out, and I made it a point to meet the bands because that's what I was into, was music, and I wanted to know the people who were playing it, and because I was their fan, big fan. Big Brother was like my favorite band of the 60s in San Francisco. They got more well known after Monterey. When they played at Monterey, then they went into the national limelight. Before that, they were still underground.
so where was the first time that you met Peter or saw the Big Brother band playing?
At the Avalon, they used to be the house band of the Avalon. Originally, like in Polk Street in the jam sessions and whatever, Chet was their manager, Chet Helms, who was the head of the Family Dog, and ran the shows at the Avalon Ballroom. Uh, at one point, they had the band already, and at one point he went down to Texas and brought Janis back, and she joined the band.
All
She,
right, okay.
she was kind of a folk singer before that. They were all folk singers, and jug band. Many of the people in the San Francisco scene all came out of like the folk music scene and jug band scene.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know. Now
Even
it
even Jerry Garcia and all these people, they all played in jug bands first in folk music.
I see.
Yeah.
So they were all trained in like blues and country from way before.
Yeah. And yeah, Janis was a folk singer and a blues singer also down in Texas. Yeah. Yeah, so there we are in the Panhandle with Eric. I must have been, around 15 years old, 14, 15. Yeah. And I'm there next to Eric with the sunglasses on the other side. And then the other guy was a friend of mine, a neighbor actually. He lived next door neighbor. He came to the city with me too, but he ended up getting drafted and went to Vietnam, and then it was a sad story after when he came back because it really affected him psychologically,
Wow. I
like many
see.
people. Yeah. Oh, here's with my teacher. I went to a, I had to leave the regular school, San Rafael High, because they wanted me to cut my hair. I was like the first hippie in San Rafael, and I refused and had a little dispute with the dean. And so they put me out of school, and I went to a special school.
Were you
Like,
really the only long-haired kid in all the school?
well, at that, in the beginning, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. In San Rafael, it was like the movie American Graffiti when I was growing up. Even if I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I remember once I got dropped off hitchhiking like on 4th Street, and then they used to cruise up and down 4th Street in their cars like all the, football guy, greasers, whatever we called them,
The
in their
jocks.
cars on Saturday night with their girlfriends, and, like in American Graffiti. And I remember once I was hitchhiking and I got dropped off on a corner there, and I was wearing like checkered bell bottoms, and I had a purple velvet cape,
All right.
long hair, and then I got dropped off in the corner, and then they'd see me and they'd run after me to beat me up. Luckily I ran faster. But in those days there was a lot of that. Like when I first had long hair, it's like, are you a boy or a girl? Boom.
Wow. It's hard for me to imagine that you could,
Long time, yeah.
yeah, to get even beaten up because you're a hippie. This is hard for me to imagine. Yeah. They're,
It
they're
happened.
quite
Listen, it
peaceful.
happened. It happened a few times.
Wow. But
Yeah,
back in the day when it was dangerous to be a hippie. Yeah.
right. So that was my teacher. He was really nice guy actually, and I went to this special school, and in that school, it was only till noon, so I could go do my poster thing after and all that, and taking the posters around, and it was only till noon, and you had to like study these books and then take multiple question tests. So I studied all the books and took all the tests for the year like in a couple of months. And so
Excellent.
then after, there was nothing more to do in the curriculum, so I made an agreement with my teacher who was pretty cool. Some of the teachers were more cool than the students, I tell you.
I'm
And
sure.
anyway, and they let me, they let me study what I wanted and write papers on it. So I was studying astrology, tarot, and magic, and writing papers on it and doing everybody's charts and all that,
Wow.
and they accepted that. So yeah, it was a good time. I don't know if you could do that these days. It was just in the 60s there was an explosion of consciousness, and it was an opening up time of people's, widening their mental, you know, horizons.
Do you think that your
Teachers,
your teacher was aware of the movement that was starting to grow
oh
there?
yeah, and even to tell you the truth, there was also a woman who was the assistant teacher, like a student teacher or whatever. And I saw her over at the Love-Ins in the Golden Gate Park and near the Haight-Ashbury in the Panhandle over there.
I
I met
see.
her.
You caught him red-handed. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's cool. I was happy to see.
And I wonder what subject was this teacher? What was he teaching?
No, he was just general teacher. And he had been a lieutenant in the Navy, I believe. He told me his story once. He'd been around the world a bit because he had been a lieutenant on a ship in the Navy. And, he was a pretty nice guy, actually. He was very tolerant with me. And in the regular school, they weren't tolerant at all. Yeah, here's me, and must have been 68.
How old are you there?
I'm probably still 16, almost 17.
Where is that picture taken?
Or maybe that's still, yeah, 16 I must be. That picture is taken at my house. My mom was really cool with me. She let me kind of do what I want as long as I stayed in school. And so at one point I wanted to move out and get my own place, and she allowed that as long as I stayed in school. And I got a place, not far away. And wow, prices were cheap in those days. It was a duplex, and it was the upper floor, and it had like 3 or 4 bedrooms and 2 or 3 bathrooms. And I had a few other freaks that moved in and lived with
Not
me.
bad. Wow.
It was like $125 a month, I remember.
Wow, amazing. So you were already living on your own.
Yeah, 16 and a half, something like that. Yeah, I had a car also. I had a Mustang.
Mustang.
68 Mustang, yeah, one of the first model of the fastback Mustang.
Oh, wow, what color?
It was a bluish color. It had a
Amazing.
420 engine, and I had a tape deck in there. It was the 8-track tapes. You know
No
these?
way.
They were the first tape decks, first tapes. They were these big things like this that went in there in a slot. Yeah, it was the first car stereos with tape and with these 8
Almost
track.
like a VHS.
Almost looking like that, yeah, but it's winning forward like, yeah, that photo, the last one was around these kind of times too. This is when, Jimi Hendrix first played at the Fillmore. Jefferson Airplane, Gabor Szabo, Jimi Hendrix Experience. And this was like maybe a week or so after maybe Monterey, which Monterey kind of also put him in the big limelight. At this time, so I was already working at the Avalon, but I was so much into Jimi Hendrix. I had the album wasn't even available yet in the States. I had his first album on import from England.
Oh, really?
And I was really into him, and I was listening to it nonstop. And so I got somebody to work for me that weekend at the Avalon, take my place. That time I was the guard of the band room door for a year. I was the guard of the band room door for about a year or so, and then I took over doing the poster route after Eric didn't want to do it anymore. And this is June 1967. And so I went there, and and the first night I met Chas Chandler. And I'd known Chas Chandler already from Eric Burdon and the Animals, because Eric Burdon was a friend of Eric's, and I used to hang out with Eric. And then they came to town, and we met them all, Eric Burdon and the Animals, and I'd met Chas Chandler. And Chas Chandler discovered Jimi Hendrix in London and became his manager. He discovered Jimi Hendrix playing in a club in London, put together the band, also found the good musicians like for him, which was Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding, and then organized this tour to the States. They recorded an album and then organized this tour to the States and everything. So I was walking around in the Fillmore. I met Chas Chandler the first night. We said, hey, how you doing? This, that, whatever, all good. Because I knew him. Hey, Chas, and then he took me backstage and I met all the band. That was cool. Then they did their set. I stood out there with Chas Chandler and watched the whole set. And Jimmy burned his guitar in the end and all that. It was basically the same set he did at Woodstock. Monterey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the beginning, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, all the songs from that first album, Purple Haze, and all that. And then we stood there watching it, and I was mind blowing. And at the end, Chas said, well, what do you think? I said, oh my God, that is amazing. So anyway,
Wow.
the next night or something, because I worked at the Avalon, we got in free for a while until Bill Graham stopped it and didn't allow us to get in free anymore. But
I see.
I was getting in free at that time. So one of the other nights I was down there at the ticket office. It was at this, you go up some stairs and then you were in the film auditorium, and down there was the ticket place. And I was getting in on the guest list at the ticket window or whatever. And then I was wearing this really cool shirt. I used to buy clothes at a place called the Town Squire on Polk Street. And I had this shirt with, puff sleeves and a big collar, and it had like all op art design on it,
Sounds cool.
like, op art, like, Andy Warhol or something. Anyway, really cool shirt. I was getting in at the window, and then I turned around and somebody took my photo. A flash went on in my face, and then I said, "Whoa!" And then I looked. It was Jimi Hendrix. He says, "Cool shirt, man." And then,
No
I said, "Yeah, I
way.
got it at the Town Squire on Polk Street." Anyway, then we walked up the stairs together, and we walked back to the backstage, and then sat down. And I pulled out a joint and lit up a joint. And he said, "How old are you?" I said, like, what was I? I must have been still almost 16,
Oh,
15
wow.
something.
So young.
And he says, "Man, you cool, man. Whatever," and all that. And we smoked the joint, and that was all really cool. I won't tell the rest of this story right now.
It's okay. I was I was waiting to see how far you wanted to go, but that's very good. You met Jimi Hendrix, you had a moment with him. That's amazing.
Yeah, and yeah, we had a smoke and a talk, and yeah, it was cool. He
I,
was cool.
I
Next time he
wonder.
came back, like the next two times he came back, I went both times and saw him, but he was already so famous you couldn't get near him.
Oh, I see.
He
Very
came
different.
back again after Axis Bold as Love, and then again after Electric Ladyland. That one, after Electric Ladyland, it was at Winterland, not at the Fillmore anymore. And with, I think it was Albert King and all that. Anyway, yeah, it was. I saw all the shows until
I have one question from the audience that also I'm very curious because I think it's a little unknown and underrated artist. What about Gabor Szabo? Did you ever meet him? I'm sure you saw him play at least.
Yeah, I saw him play a number of times. He used to play sometime in San Francisco. Yeah, he was a Hungarian guitar player who did some kind of, he had some kind of, he was involved in the 60s and did some kind of like little bit far out things, with his guitar and kind of instrumental version. He had a band. There's albums there on you. Some of he had some famous album. I don't remember the name right now, but it's all there on YouTube because I saw it recently when I was searching around things. I remember particularly meeting all the people who were kind of my idols, at the time. But
The one
Gabor Zappa was really good, he was really good. I must have met him just to say, introduced, but I can't remember, this is more than 50 years ago, all this. This is like Halloween 67 or something. Uh, there was a big show going to be at Winterland, and we all dressed up, all the crew at my house and whatever. And it was Trip or Freak was the show. And it was, what is it? Quicksilver, Grateful Dead, and Big Brother. Yeah, it was a great show. We all dressed up because it was Halloween. All the crew at my house all dressed up. We all drove over there in my Mustang, and maybe, I can't remember, was it 67 or 68? It's a long time ago now.
I think the flyer doesn't say anything.
I remember I met, we walked in and everybody was there. I saw Bear Owsley. He was there with like a wolf's thing over it. Everybody was there. It was a great show, one of the, there was a whole scene in San Francisco in those days, and it wasn't that big yet, and all the regulars knew each other, and all danced together. There was a lot of good dancers. And
Wow.
people were really into the music and dancing. That's what it was all about,
Wow.
you
Wait, I
know?
wanted to make just one focus for people that maybe we cannot go into him, but maybe you can tell the full name of Owsley for people maybe can research it because I think he's someone important.
Oh, he was also known as Bear. And he was a sound man also for Grateful Dead and did a lot of things. He made this cool jewelry also. His full name was Augustus Stanley Owsley III. He, at one point, he got fed up with America and he moved to Australia. And then a number of years ago, he passed away in a car accident in Australia. When I was in Australia once to play a long time ago, I spoke to him on the phone, and I saw him when he came back here sometimes. He wanted me to come up and visit him, but it was way up in Queensland, and I was in Sydney and not there for very long, just for this gig, and it was a long way to go, and I didn't make it. But anyway.
Wow, still so interesting to have met, all these characters back then. I mean, I don't imagine what must been the energy, no?
I knew him from very early on also. Like the last time we had a family dog logo, but it was a sticker from a later show. And this is the original logo where it says, it has the Indian Joe there in the middle. And he's got a sign saying, uh, may the baby Jesus shut your mouth and open your mind. That was the slogan of the family dog.
I
Right.
love that.
So yeah, I worked with them for a couple of years. That was really a good. After the thing on Mount Tam that I made, they said, they took me a little seriously, and Eric helped to arrange me the job of the band room door, which I did for nearly a year. And then when Eric didn't do because I was so much into posters, I had a huge poster collection. I used to do anything to collect all the posters, and I had one of the biggest collections. And then they said, well, he's really into the posters. Let him take over the poster route when Eric didn't want to do it anymore. So I used to take the posters around to San Francisco, Berkeley, and Marin every week, and the tickets for the next week's show, and a catalog selling the old posters to the shops that sold them, and all that kind of thing. And there would always be young people like I used to be. There used to be young people waiting every week for me to come, like I used to wait for Eric to come to get this week's poster. You know,
Wow.
it was kind of a little ritual.
Yeah, that's amazing that you had a poster culture, you know. I think that's a little lost now with the digital era and all that. And I love these posters, the designs, the prints, they look amazing.
Oh yeah, there was really good. Unfortunately, I mean, I had the huge collection, but unfortunately, at one point, when I was back from India at one point, and I wanted to get a bunch of money to go back to India with, so that I didn't have to come, back for a while, and I sold my poster collection. That must have been in the 80s or something. I sold, or 90s, I think it was 80s. I sold the poster collection to get money to go back to India.
Oh,
And uh, and yeah, what to do? A lot of posters were you. I had all the. I didn't just have the Avalon and the Fillmore, but I had all the off the wall things too, because I collected everything, and I went far to collect them. Hell's Angels parties, this, that, whatever, all
wow.
that kind of stuff that many people had all the Avalon or the Fillmore, but they didn't have all that off the wall stuff. And in the end, I sold a bunch of my posters to Paul Grushkin for the Bay Area Musical Archives that they were going to make. And a lot of quite a few of them got used in the book that he made called The Art of Rock. Yeah, it's a big coffee table book with all the posters inside. Good
So,
quality.
could you tell us again the name is The Art of Rock?
Yeah, The Art of Rock by Paul Grushkin.
Excellent. I think it's a one you showed me, no?
I
When
have
we
it
were.
here somewhere. You want me to grab it and show you again? But
I mean, if it's not bothering you, I think people will love to see it because
okay.
it looks fantastic. So yeah, guys, he actually has this huge book with every single poster of that time. I don't know, me, I'm a big fan of design and prints and yeah.
This thing. It's heavy, this thing.
Whoa, there we go.
Yeah.
The cover also so nice.
Yeah, and so inside I got a signed copy.
Oh, it's a signed copy.
Yeah, and inside is like all the posters.
All right. Wow, yeah. I mean, I see that it's almost impossible for you to lift up more, but yeah, thank you for showing us
There's
the
all the
cover.
buttons also. There was even at one, I have that button still somewhere. But Paul Butterfield Blues Band Jefferson. There was a few buttons that came out. Muddy Waters. There was
Oh,
bumper stickers. Those are extremely rare. And I had all these posters. What to say?
amazing.
Or many of them.
Yeah, there's such
So
an effort in design and the print back then.
yeah. It was a whole movement at that time.
Yes, like an actual poster art movement, no?
Yeah. There was a there was uh there was 5 different artists that were famous, and then some other ones that did stuff sometimes too. You
Yeah,
know?
maybe later we can talk about the person that did the poster for Mount Tam.
Oh yeah, that was also right. We can. That was he wasn't one of the mainstream the main ones, but he was a good one, and he did a few things. He also did, but the mainstream ones were, of course, Stanley Mouse and Alton Kelly. They were really famous. Wes Wilson and Rick Griffin.
Do you happen to remember who did the one of Jimi Hendrix at the Fillmore? That one looks great.
So the one with Jimi Hendrix with the eyeball, if you know that one, or which one?
No,
That
that
last one that we showed was I believe Wes Wilson, but the one with the eyeball, the really famous one. Do you know that poster?
yes, I have seen it. Yes, yes.
Jimi Hendrix with the eyeball. That's worth a lot of money. That poster, an original one, like $10,000 or something.
Oh,
That was done
really?
by Rick Griffin.
I see.
Rick
Wow.
Griffin Rick Griffin had originally been a surfer, and he did a little cartoon thing in Surfer magazine. I forget what it was called, and then he became a freak and started to do posters in San Francisco. The guy who did the poster here's the original poster for the first Family Dog tribute to Dr. Strange, Jefferson Airplane, Charlatans, Marbles, and Great Society at Longshoremen's Hall. I had that poster. I had all of these.
Wow,
Anyway,
amazing.
yeah, that's a cool book telling the whole history of the posters,
Yes.
art of, yeah.
Thank you very much for this. Very educational. I'm sure not many people are aware of the book.
Yeah, I got the book from him. I got rid of the posters because at that point I was really, like I was into India. I wanted to go back. I needed some money. And at that point, it was just pieces of paper for me. Down on Me,
Down
one
on
of
me.
their signature tracks. And it was from a program on KQED in 1967. I think it was April, where it was public television of San Francisco. They did a whole program showcasing Big Brother and the Holding Company with a number of songs and also some interview and stuff from that time.
Oh, all right.
Before they were famous, but they were already getting very well known in San Francisco and stuff in a few
All right, perfect.
places.
So let's see that and we'll be right back.
Down on me, yeah. Down on me. Oh, it looks like I'm a body that's all around. Oh, it looks like I'm a body that's all around.
Hey, everybody, this is my old friend Peter Albin. I'm so happy to have him here today. One of the founders of the San Francisco music scene and founder and leader of Big Brother and the Holding Company and a living legend, one of the few that's still surviving now.
That's true.
Yeah,
The smaller amount of us day after day.
I know, right.
And I don't know, maybe Peter, maybe I can start with you with a question to see how is your perspective from the story that Gil shared with us, how it was for you to meet Gil. How do you remember the first time you met? And yeah, how was it?
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a long time ago. I'm not sure if it was at the Avalon Ballroom or maybe a Family Dog office, because Gil used to work for Chet Helms and the Family Dog promotion
Right.
company,
But
handing out posters.
we knew each other even before that because somehow I loved the band. It was my favorite band, and I made it a point to meet you all. And I booked you for the thing on Mount Tam for Marin Youth for Action. That was before Family Dog. I after that gig on Tam, then I got the job with Family Dog.
Yeah, I don't think it was before the Family Dog. I think it was just after.
And then I remember, well, I booked you for the thing on Mount Tam, and that was just before I got my job at the Family Dog as the back
Gotcha.
room, as the band room door guard.
That's
But
right.
yeah, but I remember I
The
used to
little
meet,
guy with the hatchet. Don't
used
come
to-
through here. You
I used
cannot
to-
come through here.
right.
Where's
I
your
used to,
backstage pass? Yeah. No,
Every
everybody
day-
got into a backstage.
right. You used to go for a walk with your baby in the Panhandle. Like I remember meeting you many times in the early afternoon, and we'd walk together and talk for a long time. And you were very kind with me. Me just being a kid.
Yeah, you were just what, 14 or 15, something like
Yeah,
that.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, I have to say, Peter Gill mentioned many times about these walks in the park and your relation with him. I wonder, what did you see in him, or how did you feel with him that you took him under your wing, or at least you were kind to him because he was just
He
a
was
kid?
talking about, which was, what was happening, the scene at that time. And most of the band people, who lived in the Haight-Ashbury were very friendly, just in general. Walking down the street, people would say hi to us, and I'd say hi to people that didn't say hi to me. It was very
Right.
friendly atmosphere, and
Yeah.
I'm talking about 1966,
Yeah.
yeah, and 67. I lived on Haight Street actually in 65, and then the band moved up to Marin County in 66. So I left the house on Haight. It was Haight and Laguna, which is what's called the Lower Haight district. There's the Upper Haight and the Lower Haight.
All right.
And the Upper Haight, which I came back to in 67. I was on Central Street, and that's about a block and a half from the Panhandle,
Oh, I see.
and half a block from Haight Street. So I would just walk up there with my little stroller and my kid in the stroller, and we all we decorated the stroller in paisley. What do you call it? Kind of paper that's for like shelving. sticky paper. It's all very glittery.
Contact.
It was hippie. Yeah.
I see. And wait, maybe I was curious, maybe you can tell us a little about the first moments with the band.
So on the far right should have been James Gurley, who had probably as long a hair as Chet Helms. Then the next guy is Chuck Jones, our first drummer, then myself, and then Sam Andrew, and then Chet.
Right. This is what, a 1090 page.
This is, just a little bit, probably towards the end of the year. I would say like October or November of 65.
Right.
And it was when it was, I guess, okay to put your manager in the picture. All the other promotional pictures afterwards didn't have Chet.
Right.
Some people thought that he was Big Brother.
Right.
No, it's the band, not him.
See.
Right. And this is before he went down to Texas and brought Janis up.
Actually, he had done that in 63.
Huh?
He had brought her up. They were hitchhiking.
Right.
And then she was sent back down to Texas by her friends because she was kind of messed up, probably in early 65 or late 64. I don't really know the exact date, but then she was brought back up to San Francisco in 66 by a friend of Chet Helms named Travis Rivers.
Right. Travis Rivers, yeah.
who later managed a group called Mother Earth.
Right. I remember. Yeah.
Travis is still around.
And what
Yeah.
was the inspiration behind the first, the first formation of the band, and then when you brought Janis, what did, what was inspiration to bring her as a singer? Maybe you can tell us a little that moment from, the transition between that and finally getting Janis and bringing her from Texas, like Gil was saying.
Well, the first thing that happened really was the band playing as a backup band for a jam session at 1090 Page Street. I think you have a photograph of that too, at some point. And it had a big basement, and Chet Helms on the left here organized jam sessions during the summer of '65. It didn't last very long, maybe about 3 or 4 months at the most. And the band members, as you see them in this photograph, were the basic trio that backed up people who didn't maybe have a drummer or maybe didn't have a bass player. So we would be the house band, as it was called. And then
Right.
and we had another manager at first, who lasted a couple of months, but then Chet became highly involved because of the jam sessions that he arranged, and he became our manager, co-manager, then manager, and then he brought James Gurley into the band.
Right.
And then from that point, we did some rehearsing, more rehearsing there, rather than just backing up other people. We actually started rehearsing and getting songs together, and Sam and I would try to get songs that were, we covered songs that were like stuff that we liked.
Right.
Some rhythm and blues things, some old blues, some old folk music stuff that
Yeah.
we heard on old collector type records. And then it became pretty obvious after James Gurley got into the band that it was definitely an electric band, and we needed somebody besides myself to sing lead. And a lot of the bands in San Francisco had, a couple of them had female vocalists, Grace Slick and the Great Society,
Right.
Signe Anderson and the Jefferson Airplane.
Right.
And we just thought it was a good idea. We liked that kind of configuration, and so we started talking to Chet about auditioning female vocalists. I remember a couple, and I think we probably auditioned more than just a couple, but one was Lynn Hughes, who had worked with the Charlatans, one of the early bands in San Francisco, and a gal named Mary Ellen, who later became a guitar player in Ace of Cups.
Yeah. Right.
And there was a couple others too that we had looked at and thought about. And we thought a lot about Janis Joplin, who Chet brought up in conversation. And I had seen her in San Francisco before, and so did James. And we both thought that would be a good addition to the band because she was really into blues and maybe could be turned on to rock and roll.
Right.
Her voice was, what was like more of a folk blues singer type when we heard her in '63 and '64.
Right.
Yes, I think she carried that influence in all her work, no?
Well, for sure, on the first record that we made, you can kind of hear her older sound, I want to call it, the folky sound. But it was pretty much of a match when she came into our rehearsal. We changed the rehearsal place because my brother couldn't stand us anymore at his house to the old firehouse that Mouse and Kelly had on Henry Street. I think it was called. It was I can't remember when it had closed down as a firehouse, but it wasn't very big. It was like a garage big enough for one fire truck.
That looks like where this photo was taken, maybe.
No, this was taken at the cable car house.
Cable car, right? Cable car house, right? It would be safe to say that a lot, 1090 Page was one of the birthplace of the whole San Francisco music scene of that time, wouldn't you say?
Kind of, because we had a lot of people from the different bands coming in, singly or as a band,
Right.
on the Wednesday nights. I mean, that's where I first met Cipollina, and of course I had known a lot of the guys from Palo Alto, including Ron McKernan and Jerry Garcia.
Right.
And they started living in the city, and they would come over, even after they started their own band,
Right.
the Warlocks.
Warlocks, yeah.
So there was a bunch of people who came, and I think maybe even formed bands from some of the people they jammed with. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And so, okay, and how was it for you? I imagine that there was a big transformation after Janis entered, and I imagine also that the band as well, went through a whole process. Maybe you can tell us a little more, of how was for you finally when Janis was there, Janis was, and you guys were like, I guess it's a formation that I know the best, and maybe the world got to know the best.
Well, when we first started, when Janis first started playing with us, she only did about 3 or 4 songs by herself. The rest, backup singing with me singing lead or James singing lead. But that only lasted for about a month, and it was obvious that she was going to be the lead singer. So we just went through a lot of her songs, her material. A couple of songs that I remember were a song called Women as Losers and a song called Bye Bye Baby, which we did on our first record.
Right.
And started singing on
man.
my songs too, like Down on Me and other folk type stuff that we had done in '65.
Yeah, Peter used to sing few songs. Down on, what was it, Blind Man and Light is Faster Than Sound, and
Light is Faster Than Sound. A couple of other cover songs, some Little Richard stuff, some Chuck Berry stuff. But we would vary things a lot in our shows, and sometimes we would practice a song, do it once, and that was it. And we're not going to do that again. And then we'd log on to songs that could be developed more, and where Janis was involved maybe with the arrangement. One was Land of 1,000 Dances, which turned out to be a preacher thing, about taking the sacrament of LSD, at a church, so. Little funny thing that would last about 10 or 15 minutes.
The next video would be Piece of My Heart.
That's a little later. But anyway, that's a good story too. I used to have that record by Irma Franklin. Man, I loved it and played it over and over. It was my favorite song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was
who found the original track, to propose to
Jack Cassidy. He invited me over to his place, his apartment in the Haight, and he said, I got this record. I think you guys could do this song by Irma Franklin. It's a Jerry Ragavoy, Burt Burns song. So I took the record back to the band and played it, and we all agreed that we could do an arrangement of it that would be different than Irma Franklin's, which it really was. It was really different, I thought. And we added a instrumental part that was not in the song. So we kind of made it our own.
Very interesting. Also, a rare and more obscure track, like the sister of Aretha Franklin, which I also don't know that well. So very interesting for me to have found that track, because the only way I would have known it, I think, is because of your version.
Right. I played him the original yesterday.
Yeah, great.
That was the first time for me. I didn't know the original. Wow, yeah, I have to say, for me, yeah, as I was saying before, impossible to have known this track, and I didn't even know it was not originally from them. So amazing, really, rendition. Do you remember something of that day, Peter, that you can share with us, or?
Well, I certainly can because that I can almost pinpoint the day. That was the week where Martin Luther King was assassinated,
Wow.
a Wednesday night. We played at this club called the Generation Club. I'm sure that that particular footage was either the day after or the day after that, but it was that period of time. We
Wow.
played on the same bill with B.B. King. Uh, he actually opened for us, which we thought was kind of odd, because
That's
he was one
funny.
of our heroes. Um, and he had done a couple of things um, uh, at that show or during that particular time that really enamored us to him. He was a fantastic band leader as well as guitar player and singer. And he treated his bandmates quite well. I can't remember the drummer. I think was kind of the leader of the band, instrumentalist. But BB King would come in always on time, and um, this one night he came in late, and people were wondering why. Now some people in the audience knew, I guess, that Martin Luther King had been shot that night or that day, um, and didn't say too much. And we kind of knew, But when he got on stage late, which he never was, he was always early. He apologized, and he said, he told the audience, that Martin Luther King had been shot in Tennessee, and a lot of the audience went, "Oh, shit," and he says, "Well, I'm sorry, my show is not going to be the same tonight. I have to apologize, but he introduced his bandmates, and they played a regular blues tune, and then he started doing gospel music. Talk about getting goosebumples. Everybody was just there was a lot of people crying in the audience. It was just very touching and very moving, and and we had to like go on after him, which was not easy. And we did
Wow.
our regular show, and Sunday night was supposed to be a day of National Day of Mourning for Martin Luther King Jr. And we wanted to like not play the club because it was supposed to be the club owner's official opening night, and he was going to have guests and whatever. And so we talked to BB King, saying, I think we probably shouldn't play in honor, of BB King. We should probably not play a commercial gig. And he said, no, no, this is what Martin Luther King was talking about, is bringing me from Harlem down to you folks and integrating this whole scene. Um, we have to go on. And so again, on that Saturday night, he started getting nostalgic and did more gospel songs and brought people to tears and whatever. But on Sunday, then there was a couple of people that sat in. Joni Mitchell sat in, and a couple of people, David Blue. I can't remember all the people, and it was a great night. But the night that Martin Luther King died, after the show, after we played the second set, it was a jam session, and BB King, who hardly ever drank, got pretty drunk, and he was sitting on stage on his amplifier. And I was playing bass, Todd Rundgren was playing guitar, and Jimi Hendrix was in the audience recording the whole thing. Whatever happened to those recordings, I'd like to know. Jimi Hendrix also recorded us too,
Oh,
and
really?
that is, and Pennybaker is the footage you have is from Don Pennybaker, D.A. Pennybaker, and I can't remember what DVD that's on, but it was put out in, I think, Japan, kind of an illegal kind of thing.
All
But
right.
anyway, so that's the story about that gig. It was a week-long gig. So Gil, what was the date on that show?
On which show?
On the Mount Tam show?
April 8th, 1967. And I remember I asked all the bands, and I can't remember if it was you or Eric. I asked, who shall I get to do the poster? And they said, get Gut to do the poster, Gut Turk. So he did this poster for Marin Youth for Action. And
does the audience know that the image is from a bird film?
Bergman, The Seventh Seal.
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's from that movie, Ingmar Bergman, The Seventh Seal. At the end, they're all holding hands and going on the hillside. Yeah, that's the image from that.
I
And,
missed the reference.
You know, I had been busted for some pot, and I was on 6 months probation, and my probation officer, he was involved with Marin Youth for Action and had me join, and they wanted to have that conference at College of Marin on the pros and cons of drugs. And they needed funding. And I said, well, I know all the bands in San Francisco. We can do a benefit concert. We can get Mount Tam Amphitheater. I'd known that somebody had one thing up there before called Peace with Joan Baez and the Dead. So, and then I got all the bands, signed all the contracts, co-signed them with the superintendent of schools of Marin County. And I got Eric as MC. Two, three of the bands were playing at the Avalon that night. I had the Hawk parachute in for the same guy who parachuted in at the Human Being. He gave out handbills for the Avalon that night. Eric MC'd, and it was a huge success. They made their money for their conference. I got off my probation, so didn't have to go anymore. And I got my job at the Avalon right after that because they saw I was serious. And when I came back in 73, I met the guy who'd been my probation officer, Peter, and he was now a manager of San Francisco rock bands. His name was Michael Oster.
I know Michael Oster. He managed us for a while.
Right. Well, he was my probation officer who I did. After he saw that gig on Mount Tam, he left being a probation officer and got into the scene.
That's funny.
Wow,
Right.
I cannot believe that he was the manager from you too, Peter. Everything was connected. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
So here's some of the photos I took at that gig. I had a camera and I took some photos.
I wonder, Peter, what do you remember from your side, from this show, or maybe Gil inviting you, or you playing?
The main thing I remember is the stage was very low. It was like
Just some wooden plats on the ground. Yeah,
like 2 or 3 inches high.
Right. We didn't get that part together so well. Sorry.
Not much of a stage. And, you know, a lot of times, particularly when I first started playing electric music, if I was to play it on a lawn, sometimes I'd get shocked. You know,
There's the stage.
That's the stage.
See the stage.
I remember I got all the bands for $250 each, benefit price, and I got the amphitheater for $125.
Wow, that's cheap.
And then we got the sound system from Wally. What was it called? Wally, I forget.
Wally Hyder.
Wally Hyder, right? Yeah, and put it all together. It was a big success. It had a big spread in the Independent Journal of photos, and yeah, it was a great day. 2,000 people, according to the newspaper.
It's a good show.
Maybe here you can tell us and introduce us a little the band members as well. I think pictures of everyone. This is all the Mount Tam shot. So okay, that's you, Peter, right?
Yeah. That's Dave Getz on drums. Sam Andrew on guitar. James Gurley also on guitar.
This was the one missing in the other picture.
Right. And Janis, of course, on vocals. She's wearing a funny floppy hat.
Yeah.
So that photograph with the caption, Gil, what paper was that
I
from?
found it on internet. It's from Corky Myers. He says, I took this photo of Pink Pen's sometime girlfriend and drinking buddy Janis Joplin with Big Brother. Note the stage, quote unquote stage.
It's
Corky Myers, whoever that is.
I love
found
that
The
they.
name rings a bell. Corky Myers, it rings a bell. I think he was a musician.
Huh.
I love how they point out to know the stage. Yeah, I love that comment there.
Right.
That stage. Yeah.
Here's a good one
It's,
too.
oh yeah, there's one I found from that one. There's Beast down there.
He's on the left, yeah.
Yeah, you can see the stage down there. On the stage is the Sparrow at that time, who later became Steppenwolf when they moved to LA.
Yeah.
I remember that they couldn't get their Hammond organ up there, so the organ player Goldie just kind of danced and played tambourine. They did a set without their organ.
Yeah, it was
There's
pretty
a good
much of a kind of a slammed together kind of a stage and electrical system. I guess it
Right.
sounded okay. I don't remember, because I was
Yeah, it
not in
sounded-
the audience. I didn't go out in the audience to hear anything.
I think, I think it sounded good.
Well, that amphitheater is used for, most of the time it's used for these plays during the summertime.
Right. Well, we had this show. Then a few months later was the Festival of Growing Things by this guy Stan organized, and he even brought me in as advisor on that show. It was a couple of days show. And then after that, KFRC got it and made this Magic Mountain Festival.
Right.
And burned it all out, the mountain, because they had all the big names, and like it was like a mess, and then after that they didn't allow any more rock concerts on Mount Tam Amphitheater. It was only for the mountain troupe that did Shakespeare plays and musicals and stuff.
Right.
And this one, it's not in Mount Tam anymore,
I don't
right?
think so, no. But that's a great picture.
This might have been, when I first saw this picture, I didn't see the background. Now I see this background. So I'm thinking it might be McNair's Beach. There's a show there with the Turk Murphy Jazz Band and another rock band, but it was quite an interesting show for us to be on the same bill as a trad jazz band.
Murphy, what is it? Terry Haggerty's father used to play guitar with Turk Murphy.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Haggerty,
Yeah.
right.
And there's Bill Graham giving a smooch, kind of, I think, or
Right.
He's talking in her ear.
Grant took that photo. He has a funny story about it.
There's a love
I like that
relationship.
photo. Because what is it? That reminds me, because when I used to see Janis coming down the street, when she, in the beginning, like it must have been 66, and I knew she liked Rainier Ale. And even though I was like 15 years old, I could buy liquor, and I'd go in and buy a 6-pack of Rainier Ale and then be standing there and say, "Hey, Janis." She'd say, "Hey, baby, what's that you got there?" And I say, "Yeah, you want one?" She'd say, "Sure." And we'd sit there together and have a beer in the doorway or something. I remember.
Yeah.
She
Well,
was-
Rainier Ale, I remember, had a nickname. It was called the Green Death.
Right.
Ugh.
Oh,
Drank too much of that stuff on an empty stomach, and you hurled shortly thereafter.
Okay, and here we finally get to Cheap Thrills.
Right.
Cheap Thrills was the, famous. There was one album before that, but that was the one which
Mainstream
catapulted-
album.
Yeah, first mainstream, like gold record album and more.
I love the artwork, Peter. Was it intentional to do it comic book style?
Well, yeah, because we basically got Janis to go over to Robert Crumb's house and kind of try to woo him to do an album cover. He had never done an album cover before.
It's him. Okay, I thought it was
Yeah,
just
he's kind
me.
of from Zap Comics.
Yeah, Zap Comics, Mr. Natural, all that. Yeah, that's
That's
Art
so
Crumb.
cool. I thought it was just someone like inspired by him.
No, that's him.
But
It's
actually, the first idea for the album cover your friend did, no, with the like the Birth of Venus thing.
Well, that was an idea. Of course, it wasn't used.
Right,
This
wasn't used right.
graphic was used. But what happened was Janis wanted him to do both the front and back cover of our coming record. And she told him the title, and she told him the songs and everybody in the group. And he asked her what their personalities were like. So in these different panels here of the musicians, you'll see some impressions that Janis gave to Crumb, like Sam here on the right is always seems to be after blondes. There's only blondes in the audience, and they're all going blue. And then in the left-hand bottom corner is James Gurley with the single eye in his forehead.
Right.
So he was always searching for something. He spent some time with the Indians in Mexico, way up in the mountains, and taken a lot of mushrooms. And then the picture of me with my eyeball, I used to make funny faces to kids and make them laugh. That was one of the funny faces. And David Getz, all you see is his feet, because he's zonked most of the time.
See.
And then we did some recording at the Fillmore. Some of it is on that record. And so there was a big thank you to Bill Graham for that. When we were recording in LA, we would sometimes end up at Barney's Beanery, and some of the sounds from Barney's Beanery were recorded and put on one of the songs.
Oh,
and then, of course, the panels all to kind of describe in a cartoon style the titles of the tunes.
And I see that there is a Hells Angels logo, and it says approved by. I'm curious about that.
Right. Well, that was kind of a problem later on. But Janis used to go with a guy named Freewheel and Frank from the San Francisco Hells Angels, and he was kind of like their poet laureate. And we knew them, and we played like four different parties for them. This was like before the Grateful Dead got involved with the Angels.
Right.
Because, like I said, Janis knew one of them, very closely. And we asked them if it was okay to put their logo on there, and they said yes. But it was only the San Francisco branch, and later on, after the record came out, the San Francisco branch got a lot of heat from the national organization of Hells Angels, who said you can't do that. It has to be approved by the entire organization to do some sort of endorsement. So there was a couple albums where it was in different countries where that was not on the album.
I see.
And in another story about one of the panels here, it says where there's a guy with a turban. Well, we did a song called Harry. It was a goofy kind of impromptu song, and it only lasted something like 2 minutes at the most. And so that was supposed to be there instead of Art Crumb. It's supposed to be Harry, and it had the band members' names, or the entire band was the writers. And Clive Davis, who was the the head of Columbia Records, said, no, we can't have that song. It's too goofy. Really? So instead, they scrubbed out that wording about the song and put Art by Art Crumb. And Crumb just said, I never okayed that, that change, and neither did we. So I've always been kind of controversial. The original artwork is different.
Wow, I see. So they just put it in there, basically, that panel.
Yeah.
Well, they took out what was written there and put Art by Art Crumb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what happened with that
song? They didn't put it on the album.
What
yeah, they
happened with
took the
song?
song out that was mentioned there. And then
Harry Kirshner, it was called.
Did it ever get released anywhere else?
No.
Wow.
Except maybe on a I think it was released on a compilation CD.
many years after, basically.
Yeah. So there's a whole story about this record and the artwork. You know, where is it? Is the question. Where is the artwork now for this? Let me actually step back a little bit further. When Art Crum brought the two sides, the front and the back, to the band, this was the back, and the front was stick figures of us on a stage with photographic heads, something like you'd find in a high school yearbook. Very corny, and the audience looked funny, and we said, no, we can't use that, Robert, but we'll use the back for the front. And that's what happened. So after we had sent this to Columbia, and they made these revisions and whatever, it was in their, I guess, locker of album cover art, you know, that they kept because basically they bought it, and I think he got like something like $660 for it. Not much money, really.
Yeah.
And then it wound up in someone's hands who said that Janis had gone to Columbia and gotten the original artwork and had given it to this guy in the back of a cab because he was paying for the ride or something like that. And just, I can't, it's unbelievable that she would have done that and had the access to that secret locker where all these pieces of art were kept. And then he put it up for sale at Sotheby's, and it sold, I'm not sure exactly how much it sold for, but it was a good amount of money. Wow. Which of course no one ever got, you know, except for that guy who I think basically stole the artwork. That's all we can figure out. Later, it was resold at an auction to the head of Nike. So now the head of Nike shoes or Nike sports equipment.
No way.
Yeah, so it now sits in his office, framed.
Wow. What a bizarre destiny, no?
Funny.
So, actually, wow, that's unbelievable, you know? I didn't know we could go so deeply into just the cover. It's not even the real first cover even, it's the back cover. And what happened with that back cover? Is it somewhere
I don't know. Who knows? So that was a photograph taken of us at our when we lived in Lagunitas. It was taken on the deck with a big American flag behind us.
This was at the Matrix, wasn't it?
It was for the Matrix. Victor Moscoso designed the poster, and Lisa Law did the photograph.
Right.
Were you at the show, Gil, or is it just a poster?
The poster I had, I wasn't at that show at the Matrix. No, I don't think so.
We played several times at the Matrix, even when we were.
I was at this show. I was at this show. I loved that poster.
This poster is
amazing. It's a big poster.
Mother Lode.
It's been described as girl in a penis.
Right.
Well,
she's loaded.
Doesn't it say everything?
Big Brother and the Holding Company with Janis Joplin.
No, it just cannot be, baby.
There we are. So, Peter, please tell us a little about what was it like to play for the show. I mean, the host looks like he definitely was very out of his element. Yeah.
Don Adams
Get
was his name.
smart.
Get
He
smart.
was the funny secret agent long before Austin Powers.
No way.
Right.
Get
He's
smart.
that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
see.
It
Wow.
was a V show, and he had a telephone in his shoe.
Right.
The one with the intro with all the closing doors.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Well, no,
wow.
that's
That's
different.
I Spy, maybe.
Ah, that Maxwell Smart is not that
No,
one.
it's Doors.
Yeah,
That's
Maxwell Smart. Yeah, Get Smart. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
Amazing.
anyway. I don't know exactly why we did this show. It was, I guess, for publicity's sake. You know, that was the release of the record. So what happened physically is that the band did not play the music. It was all from the tapes, you know, the recordings that we had just done, and they had eliminated her voice, so she was singing live. But as you can, if you look real closely, there's no wires from the guitars.
Right. So you
Yeah,
were just there pretending to play,
just
basically.
yeah. You know, when you were singing and it was recorded, it was lip syncing. So we were at lip guitar playing. I'm not sure what you'd call it, you know, but we were faking it, I think is the right word. And David Getz were playing very lightly, you know, and I don't know why they chose that particular second song, because it really wasn't one of the popular songs on the record.
Ah, so the station would choose the track for you.
I don't know who chose those songs. I think "Summertime" was a good choice. It came out pretty well, I thought, but the other song probably could have been different.
How so? I think they are very nice. Maybe you can tell us what's your internal feeling when you play that other song.
Well, "Summertime" is I think it's a unique arrangement of the song. The song's been done probably 1,000 times in different arrangements, and we had heard that one of the family members, either the Gershwin family or Du Bois Hayward, I think he was the lyricist. I think his family liked our version, you know, and but other people didn't particularly care for it because it was pretty electric in the middle, not very gentle, you know. Trying to put a baby down to sleep with screaming guitars is not possible. But, you know, we like that one, and again, that came off well, and I think we probably should have just done one song and then got off the stage, but I don't know why they had us do two.
How it was for you, Gil? Did you watch this on TV when it was aired?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I think I have it taped someplace, you know, you do that. Or some other people did it and showed us. There was an effect in the "Summertime" where they had some sort of a board that had lots of aluminum foil on it, and so they were reflecting lights off of it, and they were filming that and like combining it with Janis and the band. It was their
It kind of,
psychedelic version.
right, psychedelic version kind of obscured it slightly, though.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we were on the show with I Dream of Jeannie, Barbara
Right.
Eden,
Right.
and Artie Johnson, the comedian. You know, and they both were backstage with us, but ignored us completely. You know,
Ah.
you know, we were like below them. We were rock and rollers and not TV people. So
Right.
Yeah, what a crazy meeting of the worlds there, no? I mean, this TV and you guys and yeah, what was going on in general with culture, no? I think not many people understood what was happening, no?
yeah, I know that particular the "Summertime" video. A lot of people have, you know, you can see how many people have downloaded that.
Yeah.
Quite a few.
I imagine it must have millions of views. Yeah, pretty epic performance also. I wonder. I mean, while all of this is happening, for me, it was interesting to see when the host is trying to understand, the way that people were expressing themselves. All this new culture, all this new generation. So I'm curious for you. How was it all this? Revolutionary, psychedelic, or more cultural aspect for you? Were you in it more because of the music, or all these ideas also resonated with you?
What, playing that show? I'm not sure if I understand the question.
No, I mean just in general. It was funny to see the host, like a representative of the previous generation, trying to understand you guys. And you notice,
Did you notice the audience? That's the previous generation.
Right.
And he kind of played to them after I think we did our second song. He said something to the audience I kind of overheard. He said, "Well, we'll have some real music in a while. Just a second here." You know.
I
Right.
see.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He was a sarcastic asshole, I thought, and you know, I didn't care for him at all. He was the wrong guy to introduce us, and also the wrong guy to speak to Janis. He was not hip at all.
No,
Right.
And I wonder, this actually leads me to a question that is a little deeper and more general. How did you feel, as a member of that generation? How much did you resonate with all the political or revolutionary side of, let's say, the hippie movement? Or were you more interested only in the musical side? I wonder how was for you your feeling, of that culture clash, of this new culture guys were representing?
We were involved with the underground, counterculture community, mostly in San Francisco. And when it became kind of political, like with the weathermen and people, throwing bombs and whatever, we were not part of that at all. We were, I think, part of the peace and love community, and we really believed in that. That music was the way that you'd get those feelings out and feelings back also from the audience. And um, did we play a lot of benefits? Yes, we did. And some of them were almost political, but most of them had to do with more or less socioeconomic problems of the day, or I mean, we even, Gail, we did the show for Hare Krishnas.
Right. Yeah.
A benefit for them, and also a benefit for Tassajara.
The Zen monastery. Right.
Right. Yeah. So
That Babylon, right. There was something. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I
did
was
we do
just
a benefit for the
about-
Black Panthers? No.
I was just thinking about summertime. I remember the one I really liked too was by Billy Stewart. Well, in case people didn't know who that other woman in the audience they were zooming in on sometimes, that was Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas, California Dreaming and all that.
I see.
Wow.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was big.
Flying.
Yeah, Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas. Wow, what a good performance.
What a performance, really. Sincere goosebumps when she hits those notes.
Oh, good.
What a pleasure.
Historic.
So that was the second performance of that song. We did two performances at that show.
Right.
One was on Saturday during the daytime, where we did about 4 songs, and then we just did 2 on Sunday as a kind of a, I don't know, I want to call it a reprise, but they the cameramen were told not to photograph us on Saturday, because they kind of came up with a contract right as we're like going up on stage, signing the release, and we said, no, we can't do that. We have to look at the contract, and it had to do with television footage and being shown on TV. So we said, no, you got to put your cameras down, you know. And I think there was one guy who maybe of the film crew had actually filmed us. The shots of Mama Cass, Gil, were done during the Saturday afternoon show because you wouldn't be able to see her at the nighttime.
Oh, so they edited it in.
They edited it in, yeah. And actually, Janis performed that song better on Saturday afternoon than Sunday night. But yeah, they cut out the instrumental part. That was another thing.
And was Julius still your manager at that time? Julius Carpenter.
Yeah, Julius
But
Carpenter.
then it was shortly after that Albert Grossman kind of got his fingers in there, no?
Yeah, he basically told Janis, you know, you really should be filmed because you put on a great show and it really would mean a lot to your career. So she kind of begged the band, and we had to say no to Julius, you know, our manager. No, we're going to go along with Albert here, you know, on his suggestion and do this thing on Sunday. We were in between, I think. I'm not sure exactly who we were on the same bill as the Who, Jimi Hendrix, the Grateful Dead, and the Mamas and the Papas, and I think there was another band that was before.
And I have here one question, Peter, about that also that people ask, and I'm also really curious because how did you go to write this song, for example, Ball and Chain? No, it's such a epic, legendary song. Her performance. I wonder how did you put together? Was it a Janis song or you guys?
No. Okay, here's Nicholas. Here's the story. We went to see Big Mama May Thornton down at a club on Divisadero Street called the Both Ann. And we heard her perform the song. And I was with Janis and James. I think the other two guys were not there. And we went backstage and we said, this is a great song that we would like to do, you know, and would you mind if we did, you know, the song? She said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, what we need is the lyrics. If you could write them down, and we'll give you the full credit of authorship and whatever, and the music and stuff, but we'll probably do a different kind of arrangement. She said, well, hope you don't fuck it up. And so we did it our own way, and I guess we didn't do it, you know, like her arrangement was, but because what we called it, we big brotherized it, you know.
Right.
How was that process? How was the dynamic of songwriting between the band?
Well, songwriting usually was between Janis and Sam. They collaborated a lot. Other people in the band, like myself and James, would bring in songs usually that, like James didn't write songs, so he would bring in songs that he used to do when he was in folk music. We did the Cuckoo, and I think I Know You're Right, songs that he sang. I did Blind Man, and that was from a recording that we had heard from the recordings of, and I'm blanking out, guys that recorded a lot of stuff down south with a recorder in the back of their trunk of their car, and you know, they just plugged in and would record choirs or choruses, you know, usually gospel churches and old ladies down by the riverside washing their clothes on the rocks, you know, and that kind of thing. And then we would like translate those songs into more less contemporary rock.
Not
songs.
John Hammond.
No, it was oh God, I can't remember it. I'm blanking out, but very famous.
I'm curious when you said that you big brotherized the track Ball and Chain. How would you describe that? What elements do you think that you guys added, or how would you describe that definition of big brotherizing a song?
Well, first of all, we turned it from a major seventh song into a minor. key. Yeah,
That's
and
amazing.
we added some chords to it that were part of the minor key that would work. On I Need a Man to Love, we added a part in the middle. I think I told you before. So that was, totally different melody and whatever. And in general, our songs became more, I think, raw edged, a little bit tougher. Not necessarily with this particular song, Ball and Chain. We actually kind of mellowed it out a little bit. She had a little bit higher tempo, so we slowed it down a bit and put it in the minor key, and it just got a more kind of not morose, but down feeling about it.
Yeah, more bluesy, no?
More
Somehow.
bluesy, yeah, in a way. And that's hard to do with Big Mama May Thornton. So,
Right.
'cause she's pretty much the blues. So anyway,
Right.
later on down the road, I met with one of her managers, and the manager said, your song was very helpful to her. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, the royalties from it, from the Columbia recording, helped her buy a brand new Cadillac car.
All right.
Cool.
Not bad.
Yeah. And we played in the same stage with her a couple of times, particularly down in Huntington Beach.
So wah 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 wah. So wah 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 wah.
Wow, that was very cool to see you so much in action, Peter.
Right. That was,
Yeah, that's when I was singing a lot.
yeah.
And the track
So
has
anyway,
a-
after the Monterey Pop Festival, let's go back to that,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's when there's a lot of press, particularly on Janis and Grace Slick and Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
And even Otis Redding, who kind of stole the show, I thought. There was a lot of pressure on the band to do more shows in the East Coast. We'd only done one basically 4-week, I don't want to even call it a tour, it was a 4-week stand in Chicago. But other than that, we played mostly around the West Coast of the United States, and we really hadn't gone back and tried to conquer the East Coast, or at least show up and play. So we were popular on the West Coast, not the East Coast. So anyway, we had some arguments and differences with Julius Carpin, and we decided to go with Albert Grossman, who promised a lot of things. Mostly
He
gigs
was
he
the
had his own.
manager of Bob Dylan, in case people
Yes,
don't know.
he was a manager of Bob Dylan. He was a manager of the Butterfield Blues Band
Right.
and Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Right.
And he had a lot of connections with Columbia. Now, our record from Mainstream hadn't been released as far as the album went, only about 4 singles, and it didn't seem to do so well. So this guy who owned Mainstream wasn't going to do anything with an album release unless there was some numbers, But when Monterey Festival reviews came out, he put the thing out as soon as he could without even asking us. We didn't want him to put the record out. We wanted to go back in the studio and record these songs better, and other songs.
Just
too.
for Nicholas, that was an album before Cheap Thrills, the more underground album that was recorded much earlier when they stayed in Chicago for 4 weeks.
So
It just
basically,
self-titled. It had a
was-
bunch of flowers in the front.
Just said Big Brother and the Holding Company. That was where Down on Me and number number of
Blind
other
Man,
tapes.
yeah.
Blind Man and all that were on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lights and sound.
I mean, I do like that record the way it is. It was,
Yeah.
when he recorded us, it was live recording. I say that we weren't all separate. We were in the same room. There were some baffles, but we recorded the instrumental stuff first, and then we did some vocals. And Janis would usually overdub her vocal.
That was a great album. That was the real raw early Big Brother, like, you know?
Yeah.
That was a great album. I love that album.
She had kind of a different voice, you know, at that time. She didn't strain her voice. She didn't try to like screech or get to those high notes, you know. She was a lot more folk blues,
that was
folk
before
rock.
She saw Otis Redding.
Yeah, right. So anyway, afterwards, when Grossman was put on board, you know, he tried to get the recording from mainstream stopped, but he couldn't do anything. And actually, Columbia started talking to mainstream, and they bought the contract out and that particular record. So later on, the mainstream record was re-released, but on Columbia labels. And Columbia had several different labels. I can't remember them all. Anyway, so that started us having a discussion with Columbia about recording Cheap Thrills, and we're recording live if we could. So that's where I guess we're at kind of now as far as chronology. The Berg-Herxberg Festival and that stuff is way later, you know.
Yes.
But anyway, the band went through a lot of changes during the recording of Cheap Thrills. Janis was touted as, like, you know, she was bigger than the boys, you know, kind of thing. And some of our shows, most of them I thought were pretty good, but some of the critics, particularly on the East Coast, were not too favorable about the band. You know, we weren't a bunch of studio musicians. We were organic rock and roll crazies, you know, who did
was
drugs,
the good part of it. That was what was good about it. Underground.
Yeah, a lot of people like that kind of.
They wanted more commercial.
Yeah.
The critics.
But Grossman had a bunch of people that he liked a lot who were really good in the studio. And he wanted, actually, we did some recordings. We did, some live recordings at the Grandy Ballroom in Detroit and Winterland. And the ones at Detroit were kind of tough because everything was unmixable. Everything blended. There was nothing that you could separate. So if a guitar player made a mistake, it came out on the microphone of all the vocalists, and so it couldn't be separated. So, and there were mistakes, and there was like rushing of tempos and whatever. But you know, in retrospect, listening to some of that stuff is not bad. Particularly the Winterland recordings were very good. And later, Columbia put out on Legacy, Sony Legacy, Live at Winterland, and that's what we thought that Cheap Thrills could be. So if you listen to Live at Winterland, that's what we really wanted to come out with. So when we listened to the stuff back, Grossman actually wanted to replace me and Dave. Said, I think you need a better drummer and a bass player. Right. We can sub them in there. And the rest of the band goes, what are you talking about? This is a band. This is not.
Actually, he screwed the whole thing up. She was never the same after once they did all that. It was never the same. It never had the same feeling. It was a failure somehow. And I mean, for all the fans in San Francisco who were in it from the beginning, it didn't work after. It lost something.
Yeah, definitely. And she went to a big band format. And she kept Sam. Sam wanted to go, you know, would go with her, you know, when asked. And so he played guitar for most of the year that she had a band called the Cosmic Blues Band. Right. And they did one record. They also appeared on or in the Woodstock Festival, but Sam had been replaced by that time by another guitar player named John Till, who would later continue on, along with Brad Campbell, a bass player from the Cosmic Blues Band, to the Full Tilt Boogie Band. So when Sam came back, James had gone out on the road. He liked to travel with his off-road vehicle with the winch and all the stuff piled on top, the camping, lots of camping stuff. The band was left to me and Dave. So we tried to reorganize the band in 69. And we were on our way to doing it. We auditioned a lot of people. We auditioned some singers. We played a couple of gigs with David Nelson from the New Riders of the Purple Sage and David Torbert, also from the New Riders of the Purple Sage. I mean, later became the starting members of that band.
I'm very curious. Were you part of Woodstock as the Big Brother and Holding Company?
No. At that time, Dave and I had gotten a call from Country Joe and the Fish, and they had replaced their, they were going to replace their rhythm section a third time. So we decided to go with them because it was a 2-month tour of Europe. So we did the Scandinavian countries, we did France, we did Germany, we did a whole big tour of England. It took like 2 months.
And I'm very curious about one aspect, because I have heard from other musicians of that time. It seems that first there was the first moment, no, when all these new culture and music were created and the bands started appearing and becoming popular. And then it seems that very quickly this same society that didn't really accept it really pushed to capture it, no, and try to milk something out of it. And I didn't know you were subjected to, for example, that they would put out the record exactly without you approving it. You know, I wouldn't imagine that you were pressured into becoming more popular on the East Coast. I didn't imagine that there was such a hand from the labels on the bands in that time.
Oh, yeah. I think that happened to a lot of bands. There were some that resisted signing records, like the Quicksilver Messenger Service and Miller's band. But there was a lot that did, you know, and some went with, I want to say, like the Hollywood experience, you know, I don't want to say selling out. That's not the right word for it, but being more popular, making records that would be more pop oriented. Steve Miller really, I think, was a good example of that. Although he did it his own way. He wanted to get away, I think, from the blues and do some interesting psychedelic stuff, which he did on one of his records, and then started doing more pop stuff and became extremely popular.
Right.
Still to this day, I mean, he does big concerts and stuff. And there were other smaller bands like the Doobie Brothers, you know, who came up. And we called the second stage of San Francisco Bay Area bands, Creedence Clearwater, Santana, It's a Beautiful Day, Cold Blood, the band from Oakland.
Tower of Power.
Tower of Power, yeah.
Sons of Champlin.
Sons of Champlin. And actually, Sons of Champlin were pretty early, but
I see.
Yeah.
So wait, going back
resisted
to
Goa, I think Goa Gil, they kind of resisted being made into a pop
Yeah,
band.
they until Bill left and joined Chicago.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so
going back to 69, that you were trying to reorganize the band. I mean, how
we organized it, and that. So after we left to go to Europe, basically there was nothing happening. Dave Torbert and Dave Nelson created the New Riders with Garcia and a couple other people. Later, Spencer Dryden on drums, and anyway, when we got back,
right.
What's
Not
that?
to mention Moby Grape.
Moby Grape. We forgot to mention Moby Grape.
Right.
And that's a good example. That's a good example of a company, you know, trying to really push these people who are crazies into the pop world. You know.
Yeah,
they released
they had 5 singles released at one time with the album. 545 singles.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then
big
shortly after that happened, these guys just drank a lot of their advances, I think, or shut up their arm or something because they went nuts, you know. And
Yeah, right.
particularly as Skip Spence and Bob Mosley just they became homeless people. And he just went through a weird trip and was always being forced by their management and the record company to do things that they didn't necessarily want to do.
And with Janis, they just saw in Monterey, I'm Albert Grossman from the beginning, I think, saw her as a potential superstar and had his designs of how to direct her career to get her as big as possible, because he was going to be her manager and get a cut also.
Yeah.
You know? And so
he also didn't really want, us to be
right. I know
her money. That's what he would think. She's actually bringing in all this income. It's not this other band that's backing her.
He wanted her to have a band of superstar studio musicians.
Wow.
Yeah,
like James Brown or something, or that kind of.
I think this played a big part, no, in dismantling a lot of these bands, a lot of this culture, and also pushing to the extremes many of these superstars when they were isolated with a lot of money. I think it played a big part in, how a lot of that movement slowly faded away, in that time.
And their demise, because suddenly you had all this superstardom and you didn't know how to handle it because it came so fast. Right. And you could have anything you wanted. And, that's a hard one to deal with when you're just still like barely out of your teens kind of thing.
Yeah. Kind of tough. Well, I think you described it well, Nicholas. It just kind of like, there's the big dollar sign, that a lot of these producers and record company owners, CEOs, and promoters saw. And did they agree with our philosophy? Some did, Grossman smoked a lot of weed, but still he was Grossman.
Right.
It's like, someone said one time, I think it was a comedian, Larry Haken. He said, I'd like to get President Johnson stoned, I'll give him a couple of joints, but you know what it would be? It would be President Johnson stoned. It's still the same guy. He'd be doing crazy things. You wouldn't want that. And the same thing happens with a lot of the people who are in control of the music business. And but there's another part of it. My wife calls it the ick part of music, where
Right.
there's guys who are like. And Columbia had them too. They were guys that when the bands would come into the offices, they'd say, "Well, hey, Jimmy is going to take care of you over here. We got some stuff we got to do." And Jimmy would take the band in another room and turn them on and listen to music, and everyone was kind of stoned, and they'd lead them out.
Okay.
If the band wanted to talk business, no, it was the managers would talk, and the managers were kind of on the same level. Like Albert Grossman had a lot of power with Columbia because he had Bob Dylan and Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Right.
So he said, if I want you to sign Big Brother and the Holding Company at this amount of money for this amount of time. And if you don't, I'll pull
And do you
Bob
know Peter, Paul, and Mary, Nico?
No.
Maybe our viewers don't know Peter, Paul, and Mary. They were a famous folk trio, very famous and popular, and like just in the beginning of the 60s, just before this all exploded, this psychedelic San Francisco music. And they've had a famous song you must have known, Puff the Magic Drag.
Of course.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Of
All
course.
this, right.
Yeah, that's
Everybody
them.
knows that.
Yes.
So anyway, Albert Grossman had a lot of leverage with Columbia, and that's what he pulled. So what happened was that Columbia bought the contract from Mainstream for $200,000. $100,000, half of it was from them, and the other half, $100,000, was from our monies, our first monies that we get from the Cheap Thrills record.
I see.
So we had to buy out our own record.
Wow.
Wow.
So you didn't basically you didn't own the masters until
You
then,
never owned
right?
the masters.
You never owned them, so it was really that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then
See,
when you were an unknown band, you didn't have much choice in the beginning.
Right. Right. Right.
People exploited you.
it's
They
very
exploit a lot of bands.
You were up for it because you wanted to get more gigs and you wanted to get well known and a bigger audience, and you thought it would be cool to have a record out.
Yeah.
And inexperienced, so
what
mistakes.
artist doesn't want not to get their music released, but
I,
it's very interesting to get the direct insight of a process that I always suspected that was there, and it always happens every now and then when there is like a cultural revolution. They try to capture it immediately, and they try to make money out of it or turn it into a product, and yeah, to have such direct insight to see that it was happening. Yeah, you can see also the effects it had as well.
Some producers, like modern producers, I want to say like hip hop or electronica or whatever, they understand they have to produce what the sound is that makes this group have all these people come to see them or to buy their records or whatever. They really they want to continue that, and if they start, what was the name of that group? The two guys that didn't even sing. Remember
Uh,
those?
Run,
Mickey, Millie
Milli
and
Vanilli.
Vanilli, Mickey
Milli
Milli
and Van.
Vanilli didn't even sing. I
Yes,
mean, there's other people singing their parts.
right.
that was
Right.
crazy. I guess there you can see, yeah, what happened with the music industry. Also, I mean, they got pretty quick and savvy on how to capture new movements and
I
turn them
remember
into a
when I was in
product. And
high school in San Rafael, we had a band. We used to practice in my mom's garage, and we were doing like all the underground songs, like some of the same songs you guys were doing and whatever. Just our little band used to play at high school, junior high school dance or something. And one guy from a record company, it was a time with monkeys and all this.
Yeah.
One guy from a record company actually came and heard us in my mother's garage. He'd heard about us somehow, and
Wow.
they offered us a contract,
oh
but they
wow,
wanted us to do all the songs which they were going to present us to do. And I was really into that underground San Francisco sound and playing that kind of stuff and Velvet Underground and whatever. And then I said, no way. We want to play what we want to play. I'm happy I didn't say yes, because my life would be much different now.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
wow, that's so
That's
so
true.
interesting. That already back. What was the name of the band?
Blues Majority,
Nice.
Okay. Wow.
my junior high school band. And then later we changed it to the Silver Blimp.
I love the names.
Wow. So back in the early 70s, the band was kind of like just, going along as best as it could. We had different singers. We had Kathy McDonald, we had Nick Gravenitis, and then we had on keyboards Mike Finnegan, a fantastic keyboard player, organ player. And that lasted until about 72, and gradually everybody in the group kind of like left. And um, James Gurley had a real tragedy where his wife died on a camping trip. And that's a whole other story. I won't go into that, but he left the band, and then Dave left the band. I left the band, and Sam was trying to keep it together, and Sam at that time was heavily influenced, or he was addicted to heroin,
I see.
and everything kind of like fell apart. So the band basically stopped, and I got the band van, I got the vehicle.
Wow.
And I started using that with Country Joe and the All Stars, which was a little band that Country Joe had put together after Woodstock. And it was with a couple of gals, and we continued on until about 1975 or so, or four. And I got involved in another band called the Out of Hand Band, which was mostly the Out of Work Band.
All right.
but a lot of friends. We had a lot of fun playing music. Kind of like your band, probably, Gil. Just having fun and playing other people's songs. Anyway, but not working very much. And then in '78, I did. Dave and I went back with the Country Joe and the Fish Band. We did a big show at the Greek Theater called the Tribal Stomp,
Right.
#2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of these days, the recording, the 5-camera recording, will come out. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, so after that, it was like 15 years total that the band was not together. We'd gotten together just for that one show in '78.
That was kind of a reunion family dog thing.
Yes, exactly.
At Greek Theater in Berkeley.
Yeah.
After
And
a long
I
time.
played with Country Joe and the Fish and with Big Brother and the Holding Company.
Right.
And the last act, the headliner, was the Butterfield band that was brought back together, who had also split apart. So anyway, and that's what happens. Bands come and go, and members interact and go into different groups that are well known or not. And in '87, then the band started rehearsing and auditioning singers.
I see.
So we decided upon a singer named Michelle Bastian. We worked for about 8 years with her. And then another couple of years with Lisa Battle, another gal. And after that, there's about 30 other singers that we've used.
Okay. So the core of the band remains the same, but you have changed the singers.
Yeah, well, when we got back together in '87, it was the original guitar players, Sam and James, myself and Dave Getz, and then later on we had different guitarists and like on the Hertzberg, you'll see a Puerto Rican singer named Sofia Ramos, who's very good, and Chad Quist, a guitar player from Seattle, Washington. And that's, I can't remember what year that would be, 90 something.
I think it said.
This is a song that we used to play with Janis. One of the first songs we did. All right, so here goes.
Down on me, down on me. I said it looks like everybody in this whole wide world. They're down on me. Save your love for 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 me.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Peter. So that was one more recent singer, and that was Down on Me. Maybe you can tell us a little more about the show and about the singer.
Well, she was one of about maybe 4 or 5 singers that we've used during that period of time in the 2000s. She still works with us once in a while. She's from New York and is a professional studio singer. She's done a lot of work with other singers, like as a backup singer, and she had her own albums out as a kind of a rock singer. She's not a soul singer, but she's got a lot of soul. But
Wow, she had no problem singing that song. What's her name?
she's
I
very
wonder?
good. And then there's a gal here in the Bay Area named Darby Gould, who we use a lot. Who used to be with the Jefferson Starship right after Grace left the band. And she works with us here in the West Coast. We also use a singer named Mary Bridget Davies, who is from the Cleveland area, and she's done a lot of shows in New York that are like Broadway, a Broadway show about Janis.
Oh, really? Is there a whole like musical play about
There
Janis,
were
or
there
how
were
is
two
it?
plays. Yeah, there was one called Love Janis, which premiered in New York probably around 2002 or five or something like that. And then there was another one, and that was based on her letters home and letters to her sister and brother.
Oh, wow.
That's why it's Love, comma Janice.
I see.
Um, and then the other one was a little, let's see, an evening with Janis Joplin or something like that, and that's been actually still performed around the country. It had toured, and that had toured with Mary Bridget Davies, who originated the part of Janis in New York and got a Tony nomination.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Yeah, she's very good. And then there's another gal named Eileen Humphreys who has sung with us uh, uh, in the East Coast and also in Italy. Um, and Kate Thompson, who has basically replaced the second guitar player. She plays electric violin and keyboards and sings, and sometimes sings lead. And we've had a bunch of other women too um, join in sometimes, and Kathy Richardson was a singer for us for quite a while until the Jefferson Starship got her, and she continually works with them. And she's an excellent singer. So we've actually gotten better technically, much better technically than we ever were, both
Wow.
instrumentally and vocally.
So how is your present
Is it
right
the same
now?
spirit? That's going to be your next question, right?
No, no, no,
Gil
no.
likes the old spirit. He likes the
No, no. Actually, totally opposite.
roll.
I know what you mean, and I'm sure you got that question many times. But me, I'm a person that believes that the musicians should keep evolving and not doing the same thing. And I come from electronic music where changes are very allowed and it's more free. So I think that's why I would never even think of asking you that. Actually, I want to know the opposite. How is right now your present? I mean, this video is from 15 years ago in 2005.
Lockdown.
I mean, of course, not right now, but I mean, let's say recently, like, is there any more new music? Are you still producing? Are you still rehearsing? What is right now your relation with the band or the
Well,
music?
locally, if we had local gigs in the West Coast, we would rehearse a couple, maybe once or twice at the most, because we know all these songs from years ago, and
That's true.
I think we kind of got it down by now.
I think
If we don't, we're
so.
in trouble.
Actually, Nicholas, what was it, a year and a half ago, right here at the Marin Civics Auditorium, there was a Women in Rock night, and they had Big Brother and the Holding Company and
Oh,
Jefferson Starship.
no
So we went
way.
over there and saw the show. It was great. I met Peter there also. Yeah,
All
Yeah,
that
right.
was super.
So
it was
you're
a
still active, you're still playing.
yeah, yeah. We have uh, different instrumentalists too that come in either sit in or play on the West Coast here. David Aguilar is one of our main guitar players. Um, uh, and the East Coast, sometimes we let people sit in and stuff. And that's how we got to know Kate Thompson on violin. She's fantastic. And I'm not sure if you can find any of that kind of stuff, but I mean, this has been kind of a long enough show anyway.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
I
everybody
have.
gets a good
Oh,
idea.
but wait, maybe there is something I would love to switch subjects really quickly because I wonder. So, you know Gil basically even before he went to India. And also, you saw Gil when he came back, and you also met him when he had discovered electronic music. So, what is your opinion on that whole experience of Gil in India and, of course, electronic music? What was for you, when you met Gil again years later and you saw this transformation on him? What was your
Well, it's
reaction?
an interesting transformation. I thought Gil would be maybe into, I want to say Indian music, but electronic music so modern and so different than Ravi Shankar or
Well, I
uh,
was into that too.
yeah. But I mean, you transcended that. I mean, you went beyond that. I mean, that's classical music, right?
Yeah.
Indian classical music. So this is stuff that actually, when I started working at City Hall Records, at record distributor that I worked at until just recently, we had a lot of house music, and we had some of our own labels and artists such as MC Hammer, and Mac Dre, E40 was one of our artists. Yeah.
And did you like this house music? What was your reaction?
No, not particularly. It sounded too much like looping, which it was, And when I started talking to some of these producers who would come in to get their records or to give us their records, I would explain to them how we used to record. And they go, "What? You actually went back in and recorded that? Why didn't you just do a loop?" No, that's...
They didn't have, I mean, some people were doing loops then with reel-to-reel tape machines, but it was experimental. It wasn't a mainstream thing at all yet.
Yeah.
And I wonder, did you ever get to see Gil in a real performance of his, in the last year?
No. Except on DVD.
And what is your opinion on the music or the feeling or how the party looks? Maybe you can tell us a little, what was your first reaction when you found out and saw him playing there for 24 hours, and that he also became a certain legend himself
Listen to
as
it for
well.
54 hours,
24.
24 hours. Or however long. That's a long time.
Yeah.
I think an hour set is long enough myself, but I have played longer, but no. With that kind of music, yeah, it can go on, and and like trance music, that can like put you in kind of a holding pattern, or it can be, if it's dance trance or whatever, more house stuff, you get more into dancing. When I did a gig, Big Brother did a gig down in Austin, Texas several years ago, and someone said, "We're going to go back to your hotel, but they have a club there, and they'd love to have you come in and just hang out and dance and whatever." And the music was so fucking loud. I mean, I thought I was loud, but it was like boom, da, boom, da, boom, da, boom. I just, 65 beats per minute or something. I don't know.
For sure, I mean, the levels of decibels and BPM have increased enormously.
Yeah, and you couldn't talk to anybody. There was a young girl who would want to dance, with you, and then that she'd drift off to somebody else because you were trying to talk to her, and she couldn't hear what you were saying.
Right.
Would you like a drink? Oh, come back here. I want to get you a drink.
Now it's kind of like dance is active meditation,
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
you don't even have to dance with somebody. You're dancing with the spirit.
Well, that's the way that's the way it was at the Avalon Ballroom.
Also, yeah, that's right.
It's gone full circle.
Exactly. Maybe I can share my side. For me, as you guys had Janis playing on stage, or you had the Avalon, me, I had Goa Gil. I had Goa Gil in 2005 when I was 18. It blew my head apart. I couldn't believe how, this old guy can play this music that I don't know, and like, how can he stand there for 24 hours? And the whole experience, like, that he brought, that, you felt the India vibe, the sadhu, holy man vibe, combined with also Goa in the 90s and the early raves.
Redefining the ancient tribal ritual for the 21st century. I mean, I called it that in the 90s. It was still the 20th century then.
Yeah.
For me, all this loud, repetitive music ended up being a very big path of spirituality as well. And I wonder, maybe I could get your opinion on that. What about all this other side of Eastern philosophy, Hinduism, that, of course, for Gil was a very significant part in his life? What was it for you? Because also in the 60s, there were a lot of these ideas. Did you take in anything of this, or is not something that you were so concerned with, Peter?
Well, when I was a freshman in high school, my brother was a senior, and he and some of his friends were interested in getting to know about different religions. So they'd go to different churches, and they'd bring me along. They'd get into discussions and with different people from the churches and listen to different sermons and whatever. And also at that same time, there was I want to say, beatnik influence. And part of that was Zen Buddhism.
Yes.
And people getting into that. And the Zen Center started, I think, in 1959, I think it was, in San Francisco. You know,
but it was always there in the thing, like even the gathering of the tribes in San Francisco and Golden Gate Park, which was the first really big affirmation of like all the people coming together, and Leary and Ginsberg and all the San Francisco bands, and everybody was there. The poster had a sadhu on it with they had to put a third eye in him. Oh. Yeah, there's a sadhu with Jetta and three eyes. And that was the Gathering of the Tribe poster. One of them, there was a few posters.
Yeah.
But there was always some, in the Oracle also, there was things about Shiva and different Hindu, thoughts. And, it was a time of awakening. I mean, I got my first, somebody gave me a Gita Press Bhagavad Gita as a present in Christmas in 1968 or something. And that was one of the things which also, besides my grandfather's photos and stuff, was one of the things that got me headed towards India later on.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how much you are aware, Peter, but of all the huge path that Gil took, and becoming Sri Mahant, which is a rare thing and a rare position inside the Nagababas and Junakara. Like, it's quite particular that you took under your wing someone that will become a legend himself and have a big foot, in India, and as well in electronic music, and still to this day, he's very relevant and he still plays very
new
music.
Well, things rub off and great minds think alike, no?
Absolutely wonderful. The full circle, no? From
because being with Peter and with Janis and Jimi Hendrix and all the groups in San Francisco in the beginning, and then with the sadhus, when I got to India and traveled around and stayed with this sadhu or that sadhu, everybody that you spend time with and kind of merge with in that time that you're spent, you keep something from that. And that's what helps you to grow and evolve into your special personality. So, Peter was one of my first gurus also.
But not on any Zen level, I don't think, I was not very quiet. I was not, you said,
but
let's get into transcendental meditation, for example. That, that was something that tried to turn people on to us rock and rollers onto. And it's very difficult, because we're into like being very active and, meditating. I'm thinking of a song. No, don't think of a song. No, I can't help it, So.
Being one with the music and the dance is a kind of meditation also.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you noticed, and people have asked me, particularly Gil, after that show in Marin, a kid who I worked with at City Hall, he came up to me and he says, are you always like that when you play? And I said, like what? He said, well, your eyes are kind of turned up and you're kind of like in a zone or something. And I said, well, sometimes it depends upon the song. It depends upon the feeling, But like on that tape from the Monterey Pop Festival, I was in the zone, and I kind of like looked like I might faint or something,
So you didn't really think about it. For you, it was more a feeling, a more natural, more.
Yeah. Well, you'll see. Gil will tell you. These guys who are playing, fantastic leads. Their eyes are rolled back and
you're completely one with what you're doing in that moment. So that's a kind of samadhi in one kind of way. You know what I mean? When you're completely, also when you dance, like, if you become completely one with the moment, it's like an active meditation. Also, when you play music, it's coming through you, the spirit, you're one with it.
And that was a lot of that kind of dancing was happening in the early, late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. You really got into dancing, I thought. probably in '66. I remember, girls jumping on stage, wanting to get more into it. We'd have to like tell them be on the side. But a lot of the gals and guys too that were really into dancing on the floor, they were hit by this light, the liquids,
light,
also strobe
and the
light.
psychedelic light show, and it was a whole environment.
Yeah, and they really got into it, and they didn't care whether someone came up and wanted to dance with them, and then went to somebody else, or they went. It was free.
And that was a big part of my life and a big part of my training, which I took on to other things as I evolved in my own way also. But that's a big, those are my roots, and that's why I wanted Peter here today, and just to introduce everybody. They might not know all these things, and it's interesting for them.
Here we are.
Amazing, Peter. You are so right. The band is as like that technically is so much better. I love your modern bass. I love to see you sing like that. That was amazing. It's such a good track also.
Yeah, but if you see how I used to sing it in the 60s, it was really raw too. Huh?
I see the evolution and I think it's amazing and it's such a refined version. And I wonder, you have sampled this very famous classical track that I'm trying to remember. Eric, this it from some classical piece of
Oh,
music.
yeah. Oh, hold 'em on, King.
Ah, exactly. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much, Peter. It's an absolute honor to have you and to share us your life and what you did, your music and every story. Thank you very much. It's an honor to meet you and to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
You too. Talk soon.
All righty.
Okay. Adios.
Off down to lunch.
Okay.
Wow, thank you so much today that you bring us, such a piece of history and so cool to see now there Peter expressing himself and the ideas about music. I think that's a good way to show how he was now and back then as well. Not so different.
Right. So good. Well, it was a bit long today, but it was fun. Thank you, Nicholas. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.
So thank you very much, Guruji. I hope you have a nice evening there. And
Thanks
we'll
for
talk
everything.
soon.
Talk to you soon. Om Namo Narayan.
Om Namo Narayana, Guruji.
Har Har Mahadev.